All right, guys, welcome back. We are going to get started on 1.3, which is the midpoint and distance formula. Two of my favorite things to learn about if you have picked up your workbook. If you're completing this after Wednesday and you have your workbook, you can follow along with me on pages 18 and 19. We might jump around. Yeah, we're definitely gonna jump around in this one. We're gonna skip example 2, and we're just gonna do 1, 3, and 4. But you should be able to follow along with me. You have a little notes column in your book too. So anything that I write over there, you can as well. So the first problem, it asks us to find the midpoint. Okay, I'm going to sing this song once. You're going to get so sick of me because I'm going to sing it over and over and over again. But a really good way to remember the midpoint formula is like an old elementary school chant where it goes midpoint, midpoint, what do you do? Add them together and divide by 2. I know that seems silly, but I have seniors who will quote that back to me and tell me that they still remember midpoint because they remember midpoint, midpoint, what do you do? Add them together and divide by 2. And what that means is that anytime you have 2 coordinate points, they're always in the form, x, comma, y. It's always the x coordinate and the y coordinate. So this is an x comma y, and this is an x comma y. So now, so I don't get confused, I'm going to group them. So since this is my first point, I'm going to call this x1 and y1. And then because this is my second point, I'm going to call it x2 and y2. That way I don't get confused because I have 2 x's in this problem and I have 2 y's in this problem. So the formula for midpoint is adding together the x's, adding together the y's, and dividing them by 2 to get a new point. So I like to write the formula like this to remember that our answer is also a coordinate point. So if I take my x's and I add them together and divide it by 2, I'll get a new x. We can call that x3. And then if I take my y's and I add them together and divide them by 2, I'll get a new point and we'll call that y3. And so my final answer is going to be this new point that is halfway between the 2 other points, okay? So you want to think midpoint, middle. You're looking for the point that's directly in between these 2 points. So midpoint, midpoint, what do you do? Add them, meaning the x's, together and divide by 2. Add them, meaning the y's, together and divide by 2. So what that looks like is I'm going to take just my x's and I'm going to add them together and divide by 2. And I'm going to take just my y's and I'm going to add them together and divide by 2. And you can use a calculator for anything that you don't feel comfortable doing with your brain. But I got my answer as 3 and then negative 3.5. Negative 2 plus 8 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then 5 plus negative 12 is negative 7. Divided by 2 is negative 3.5. So that's it. That's all the midpoint section is finding out what is the point that is right in between those 2 segments. Okay, or sorry, those 2 points. What is the midpoint? So, same thing for E. Midpoint, midpoint, what do you do? Add them together and divide by 2. So these are my y's. I'm going to add those together. These are my x's. I'm going to add those together. And I'm just going to plug and chug into that formula. So you might want to use a calculator on this one if you got one, unless you're good at adding decimals. But I've got, oops, that's still a highlighter. 2.5 plus negative 6.2 divided by 2. And then negative 7 plus negative 3.8 divided by 2. So 2.5 plus negative 6.2 is 3.7 divided by 2. I get negative 1.85. And then I've got negative 7 plus negative 3.8 divided by 2. And I get negative 5.4. And that would be my midpoint, right in the middle between those two answers. So that's midpoint. Taking the x's of 2 points, adding them together and dividing them by 2 to get a new x. Taking the y's of 2 points, adding them together and dividing them by 2 to get a new y. We are going to move on to distance. Midpoint and distance go well together because they both are about having 2 endpoints and using those 2 x's and those 2 y's to find new information. So in your notes thing before we look at the try it, we are going to write out the distance formula. And I've got another silly, goofy thing to help you memorize it. You obviously, might get away with not memorizing it while we're online, but just know for the ACT, you will have to have it memorized, and going forward in future math classes, you will want to have it memorized. So I'm going to teach you a good way. So I'm going to show you the formula, and then I'm going to teach you the way that helps you remember it. So the formula looks like this. So that's the formula. That's a big square root symbol. And then you take the square root of x1 minus x2 and square it. And then add it to y1 minus y2 and square it. Here is the way that I remember it that someone taught me when I was in high school. The distance formula is about a girl who has long hair. She has 2 eyes and a nose. Her eyes have eyelashes, and they have pupils. And I know that that doesn't look like a girl, but that gives you the skeleton of the problem. And then as long as you can remember to put the x's together and the y's together, you'll always get it right, okay? The only thing that matters is that you preserve the order. So if I do x2 minus x1, that is totally okay, as long as when I do the y's, I do y2 minus y1, okay? So the important thing that's up to you is remembering that the x's have to stay grouped together and the y's have to stay grouped together. In whatever order you do the first eyeball in, you have to do it for the second, okay? You can also flip it around. So it can also be, so that's my girl with long hair. She has 2 eyes and a nose, eyelashes, and pupils. And so I could put the y's first. I could do y1 minus y2 and x1 minus x2. That's totally fine. I can switch the order. But remember, I did y1 minus y2, so I had to do x1 minus x2. So lastly, I could do it one more time, and I will, just so that we can have the repetition. We've got our girl with long hair. She's got 2 eyes, a nose, eyelashes, and pupils. And I can have the y's go first, and I can make the y2 go first if I want, as long as I make the x2 go first. So those are all the different ways that you can write this equation. Every single one of these are right. And so that's why, as long as you can build the skeleton, you will most likely be able to put the points in the correct place. As long as you keep the y's together and or keep the x's together, keep the y's together, and preserve the order. So let's take a look. Tavon claims that the distance formula is the square root of x1 minus x2 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared can also be used to find the distance between 2 points. Is he correct? Absolutely. This is kind of a silly one. That's kind of obvious. Yes, the distance formula can be used to find the distance between 2 points. That is true. So yes, he is correct. That is the distance formula. So let's put it to the test. So it says, how far does the shortstop need to throw the ball to reach first base? So distance is measuring how far something has to travel. Could say, what is the measure? What is the distance? What is the length? How far? Those are all words and ways to say what is the distance. So I want to know, what is the distance, or how far is it from shortstop to first base? Okay? The most important thing, right? I can go ahead and start. I can draw my girl with her long hair, her 2 eyeballs, her eyelashes, her pupils, and her nose. I miss you guys in person because you guys always like laugh and roast me and then tell me that's the ugliest girl you've ever seen and that doesn't look like a girl. It looks more like a robot, blah, 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 blah. But I love that stuff, and I miss you guys not telling me that it looks stupid because that always makes me laugh. I can get started and I can do all that, but I'm stuck until I have 2 X's and 2 Y's. So that means that I have to look at this coordinate grid, and I need to know the coordinate of the shortstop and the coordinate of the first baseman. Okay? So remember, coordinate points are always X, comma, Y. And it's X because you do the horizontal number first, comma, Y, because then you do the vertical number second. Okay? So a coordinate point is X, comma, Y, because I have to do my horizontal distance first, my vertical number second. So if I want to go to the shortstop, I'm going to go over 5 and up 10, which means my coordinate is 5, 10. If I want to get to the first baseman, I'm going to go over 10 and up nowhere. So my coordinate is over 10, up 0. So now, I would recommend labeling them. If you have highlighters, highlighting looks really good. It helps you organize your pairs. But I would label them X and Y, and then group them however you want. If you want to make these guys the 1s and these guys the 2s, go for it. If you already were ahead of me and you labeled the 10 and 0 the 1s and the 5, 10 the 2s, it doesn't matter as long as they're grouped together. So now, these are my X's. Oh, can't really see it with the picture in the background. And these are my Y's. And now I'm going to plug them into the equation. So I'm going to do the 1s minus the 2s. So x1 is 5, x2 is 10, y1 is 10, x2 is 0. So now you are 1 click of a calculator away from having the answer, but a lot of clicks away from typing it in correctly. So I'm going to pull up my Calculate 84 app. Again, I recommend you guys get this app, or you use Desmos online, whichever one you prefer. I'm going to type in second. Oops, sorry, I did not want to do that. Second, x squared to get the square root symbol. And then I'm going to type exactly what I see on my paper. So I'm going to type a parenthesis, 5 minus 10, parenthesis. And now to square it, I have 2 options. I can either pick the X2 button on the left above the word log, or I can use the little up caret on the right-hand side under the word clear to get an exponent. I'll show you both. So right now, I'm just going to press the X2, and that gives me my squared. Then I'm going to add parenthesis 0 minus 10 parenthesis, and now the caret on the right side below the word clear will give me an exponent that I have to choose myself. So I can choose to make that too. And then let me make sure that matches our paper. Nope. Good thing I checked because I did this one backwards. This one should be 10 minus 0 squared, and hit enter. So I'm going to round that to the nearest hundredths. The hundredth is 2 decimals. So I'm going to look at the third decimal and decide what I should do. So the third decimal is 0. So I'm going to leave that 8 as it is and not round it up. Oops, I totally forgot to look at it. 11.18. Oops. 11.18. And that's your distance. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Text me, call me, email me, Canvas message me. You know what to do. I can walk you through the notes. I can help you with the target. Anything you guys want or need, let me know, and I'll be happy to help. All right? Love you guys.